"Pretend to be my wife for Christmas," the prince begged. But the condition he demanded left her. "Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from." Snow had begun to fall in the night, softly at first, then in a thick white curtain that swallowed the city. By morning, the roofs of Schönberg Palace were dusted in white, and the windows glowed pale against the grey sky. Down in the servants' wing, however, there was no time to admire the weather. "Careful with that tray, Clara." Frau Metzger's sharp voice cut through the rattle of pans. "If you drop one more cup this week, I shall have your salary halved. Do you hear?" Clara Weiss tightened her grip on the silver tray. Her hands were red from the cold water of the scullery, her fingers stiff, but she nodded. "Yes, Frau Metzger. I hear." The housekeeper sniffed and turned away, skirts swishing. Clara glanced down at the delicate porcelain cups, trembling ever so slightly on their saucers. A footman brushed past her shoulder, and the tray rocked. "Watch it," he muttered. "I am," she whispered, more to the tray than to him. The corridor from the kitchens to the breakfast room was narrow and busy. Cooks rushed past with steaming pots. A maid hurried by, carrying a stack of linens higher than her face. Enormous coal scuttles scraped against the stone floor. Clara moved along like a small boat in a crowded harbour, trying not to collide with anyone. At the turn it happened. A scullery boy, no more than 12, slipped on a damp patch on the floor. His elbow flew out. It struck the underside of Clara's tray. The porcelain leapt as if startled, then crashed to the ground in a spray of white shards and pale coffee. The corridor went silent for a heartbeat. "Oh no," Clara breathed. The boy scrambled to his knees. His eyes were wide, terrified. I did not mean... What is this?" Frau Metzger swept around the corner like a storm. Her gaze fell on the broken cups. "What have you done, Clara?" Clara's mouth opened, but the scullery boy got there first. "It was her, Frau Metzger. She bumped into me. I swear." Clara turned toward him, stunned. "That is not true. It was an accident. You slipped." The boy looked at her, his face pleading. There was more fear than malice in his eyes. If he was blamed, he might be beaten or worse, dismissed from the palace. Frau Metzger folded her arms. "Enough. Cups do not leap from trays on their own. It is your responsibility, Clara. That was a full set from Vienna. You clumsy girl." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "I am sorry. I can pay, little by little, or I will work extra hours." "Please, Frau Metzger, do not put it on the other servants." The housekeeper's lips thinned. "You could work for 10 years and never pay that off. The master of household accounts will decide what to do with you. Until then, you will return to your regular duties. I cannot have you dropping anything more of value." She turned to the scullery boy. "Clean this up." Quickly. The boy nodded, eyes down. Clara remained where she was, frozen, as though her boots had rooted into the stone floor. "Did you not hear me?" Frau Metzger snapped. "Go on, and pray the master does not send you away before Christmas. It would be a pity. For you." Clara's chest tightened. Christmas. In another household it meant warmth, family, laughter around a tree. For her it meant more work, more guests, more opportunities to make mistakes. Only this year, it might also mean the street. She bent to gather the larger pieces of porcelain into her apron. One of them had a painted flower on it, still whole and perfect, surrounded by jagged edges. "Back to work," Frau Metzger repeated, less sharply this time. "We will speak no more of it until the master calls." Clara nodded again and carried the shards away, her throat thick. She would not cry. Not here, between the rolling carts and the clouds of steam. She would not give them the satisfaction. Hours passed in a blur. She scrubbed floors, polished railings, carried logs to the smaller fireplaces outside the main halls. All the while the image haunted her. The porcelain cups shattering on the stones, the scullery boy's frightened face, Frau Metzger's cold threat. By noon, she was on her knees in a seldom-used corridor, scrubbing away the marks left by boots, when a shadow fell over her. "Clara Weiss?" She looked up. It was Herr Albrecht, the master of household accounts, tall and thin, with a key ring at his belt that jingled when he walked. She had never heard it sound pleasant. "Yes, Herr Albrecht." He studied her with narrow eyes. "Leave your bucket. You are to come with me." Clara pushed back from the floor, wiping her hands on her apron. "Am I to go to your office, sir?" No. He sounded almost annoyed. You are summoned to the East Wing. To His Highness. She blinked. His Highness? The Crown Prince. Herr Albrecht glanced at her dirty skirts, the damp hem, the wisps of hair escaping her bun. You will clean your face first. Try to look less like you crawled out of a coal bin. She swallowed. Yes, sir. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she splashed water on her face at the nearest basin, smoothed her hair with trembling fingers, and tried to make her apron look less wrinkled. It was useless, of course. She looked like what she was, a maid who spent more hours bent over floors than standing straight. Why would the prince want to see her? Had Frau Metzger spoken to him already? Did they dismiss servants personally when they damaged expensive porcelain? She felt almost light-headed as she followed Herr Albrecht through corridors she barely knew. They climbed a narrow staircase and emerged into a hallway lined with tall windows and portraits. The air was different here, quieter. The smell of coal and boiled cabbage did not reach this part of the palace. Her footsteps sounded too loud. Hurry, Herr Albrecht muttered. His Highness does not like to be kept waiting. Clara's palms were damp. She wiped them again on her apron without thinking. When they reached a door with carved panels and a gilded handle, the master paused. You will speak only when spoken to. Do not faint. Do not attempt to touch anything. If you are dismissed, you will leave without argument. Do you understand? Yes, Herr Albrecht. He knocked twice, then opened the door and bowed in one fluid motion. Your Highness, Clara Weiss, as requested. Clara stepped inside. The room was large but not crowded with furniture. A fire burned in the hearth, and tall windows let in the pale winter light. Shelves of books lined one wall. Maps and documents were spread over a broad desk near the center. Behind that desk stood the Crown Prince. He was taller than she had imagined, not as broad-shouldered as some of the soldiers she had seen, but with a straight, rigid posture that spoke of discipline. His dark hair was slightly disordered, as if he had run his hands through it too many times. His uniform jacket was unbuttoned at the collar. There was ink on one of his fingers. She had seen him before, of course. From a distance, during parades, at Mass, on the balcony when he appeared with the Emperor. There he had seemed like a figure from the paintings in the gallery, composed, remote, an emblem rather than a person. Here in the study, his eyes were alive, tired perhaps, but alive. That will be all, Albrecht, he said, not taking his gaze from Clara. Herr Albrecht bowed again and withdrew, closing the door behind him. Silence fell. Clara swallowed. Her hands wanted to twist her apron, but she held them still. Your Highness, she said softly, attempting a curtsy. It came out awkward and far too low. He watched her for a moment longer, then exhaled, as if he had been holding his breath. You are Clara Weiss. Yes, Your Highness. Age? She blinked. 17, Your Highness, almost 18. He nodded slightly, as though that confirmed something. How long have you been in service at Schönberg? 3 years. And before that? I was in service in a smaller house, Your Highness, in the city. And before that? She hesitated. An orphanage, Your Highness. His eyes flickered. Not with pity exactly, more with interest, as though he had just discovered an unexpected detail in a painting. You can read? Yes, Your Highness. Not in Latin or French, only German. Who taught you? A nun, at the orphanage. She said it might serve me one day. And has it? Clara thought of the lists she sometimes helped copy in the laundry, the notes posted in the servants' hall, the prayer book she read by candlelight when she could. Yes, Your Highness, in small ways. He moved from behind the desk and walked toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. For a moment, he seemed to forget she was there. He studied the snow falling on the courtyard outside. I am told, he said slowly, that you broke an entire set of porcelain this morning. Clara flinched. Yes, Your Highness. On purpose? No, Your Highness. Was it your fault? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The image of the scullery boy's frightened face rose in her mind. Partly, she said at last. I was carrying the tray. So it must be. Must it? He turned his head slightly. The report I received said a scullery boy slipped and struck your tray. Clara stared at his back. He already knew. Then why ask? He is younger, she murmured. If they blame him, he could lose his position. It is nearly Christmas. I can find work elsewhere." He might not. The prince was silent for a heartbeat. "You are willing to accept full blame for something that was not entirely your fault, in order to protect a boy who lied to save himself?" She shifted her weight. "I do not think he meant to lie, Your Highness. He was frightened. Fear is often the mother of lies." She did not know what to say to that. He turned away from the window and faced her fully. His expression was searching now, as if he were trying to see beneath her skin. "Do you know who I am, Clara Weiss?" "Yes, Your Highness. You are Prince Leopold von Habsburg, the Crown Prince." "And what do you think that means?" Her pulse hammered at her temples. "That one day you will be Emperor, Your Highness, that you carry a great deal of responsibility, and that I do not spill porcelain," he added dryly, "at least not where anyone can see." Her lips twitched, then stilled again. Did princes make jokes? He took a step closer. "Look at me." She lifted her gaze fully to his face. It felt almost like disobedience. Servants were taught to keep their eyes lowered, to fade into the edges of rooms. "I saw you," he said quietly. "Last week in the chapel. You were polishing the candlesticks after everyone left. You thought you were alone. I did not see you, Your Highness. I would never—" "I was in the side chapel," he interrupted, "speaking with the chaplain. You looked up toward the altar. You looked tired." She lowered her eyes again. "I am sorry, Your Highness. I did not mean to look so." "It was not that." His voice had softened a little. "You looked at the altar the way I suppose I sometimes do, as if you were trying to decide whether God was listening or laughing." Her breath caught. "I did not mention this to anyone," he said, "but it stayed with me. Tell me, Clara Weiss, if you thought God was listening that day, what would you have asked for?" She stared at the floor. The question was too large, too private. "I would have asked," she whispered, "for a place of my own, even a single room, with a door that I could close without asking permission, and maybe someone who would knock before entering. And if God were laughing," she hesitated, "then I would have asked for the strength to keep working, so that one day perhaps I would no longer care whether he was laughing or not." The prince was silent. When she finally dared a glance up, his expression had changed again. There was something like decision there now, hardening his features. "You are an unusual maid, Clara Weiss," he said. "You answer honestly, even when it does you no favor." "I have learned," she said softly, "that lies do not remain hidden, Your Highness. At least, not for the poor. Not for princes either," he muttered. He walked back to his desk, picked up a sheet of paper, then set it down again. Orderly stacks of documents lay everywhere, bearing seals and signatures. He looked as if he had been reading for hours and found nothing he wanted. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a small chair near the fire. She stared. "Your Highness, I cannot—" "I am the Crown Prince," he said, not unkindly. "I promise you, if I tell you to sit, the roof will not fall in." She obeyed, perching on the edge of the chair, as if it might reject her at any moment. He remained standing. "I am in need of something, Clara Weiss. Something no minister, no general, no counselor seems able to provide. I am only a maid, Your Highness." Her voice trembled. "I do not see how I could offer anything valuable." "That," he said, "is precisely why you might." He walked around the desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. "My father," he began, "has arranged a marriage for me, with a princess from a foreign court. You would not know the particulars. It is meant to secure an alliance, silence certain factions, reassure certain bankers. It has been decided without the slightest regard for the fact that a marriage is meant to be lived, not just announced." Clara did not know what to say. Servants spoke about such things in whispers, but never out loud, never to the people involved. "I have refused," he continued, "repeatedly, politely, less politely. I have explained that I cannot bind my entire life to a stranger for the sake of a treaty that will be forgotten in 20 years. Your Highness," she said cautiously, "forgive me, but is that not how princes have always married?" "It is," he agreed, "and look where that has led us. To an empire held together with ink and resentment, to a people who see their rulers as distant portraits, not as men who might bleed as they do." He looked at her sharply. "Do you think I am a portrait, Clara Weiss?" She hesitated. "Now?" "Yes. Now." "No, Your Highness." "What then?" She swallowed. The truth felt dangerous. But he had asked. "You look," she said slowly, "like a man in a room that is too small for him, and too crowded at the same time." Something flickered in his eyes again. Not offense, something almost like relief. "I told my father," he said, "that I wished to marry for at least some degree of inclination, that I wanted to know the woman who would stand beside me for the rest of my days." "And His Majesty?" she asked, unable to keep the curiosity from her voice. "He listened for exactly 3 minutes," Leopold said dryly. "Then he reminded me that my heart is not part of the state budget and therefore requires no consultation." She bit the inside of her cheek to keep from smiling. "So," he continued, "I'm under pressure. Before Christmas I must present to the court a betrothal that satisfies everyone but myself. Unless—" he let the word hang in the air. "Unless what, Your Highness?" she asked. "Unless I present them with a fait accompli, a situation they cannot unravel without causing greater damage to themselves than to me." He straightened, his gaze fastening on her with unsettling intensity. "That is where you come in, Clara Weiss." Her fingers tightened on her apron. "I do not understand, Your Highness." "I require a wife," he said simply. "Immediately. One who is not part of any foreign court. One who is not tied to any faction at home. One who owes her position entirely to me, and therefore cannot be easily used against me." Her heart stuttered. "You wish to marry a stranger?" she managed. "Yes," he said. "But not the stranger they chose. The one I choose." She stared at him, unable to speak. His mouth twisted. "Do not look so alarmed. I am not about to drag you to the chapel without your consent. I am not a barbarian, though some at court may disagree. I am glad to hear it, Your Highness," she whispered. He took a step closer. "What I propose," he said slowly, "is this. For the duration of the Christmas celebrations, you will pretend to be my wife." The words struck her like a blow. She shook her head, as though she had misheard. "For your wife? Secretly married," he clarified. "A private ceremony months ago, without my father's knowledge. A scandal in the making if exposed. A scandal that would make any arranged alliance difficult if not impossible." She struggled for breath. The room seemed to tilt. "But I am a maid," she said. "Everyone in the servants' wing knows me. I serve in the hall. I polish the silver. How could I appear before the court as your wife? They would see through it at once." "Not if they are told they were deceived," he said. "Not if they are told you were kept deliberately hidden, for fear of precisely that reaction." Her cheeks burned. "They would hate me, Your Highness. They would never accept it." "Some will not," he agreed. "Some will try to destroy you. I am under no illusion about that. But you would not face them alone." She shook her head again. "You ask too much. I do not know how to speak with nobles. I do not know how to dance the dances. I have never worn a gown that cost more than a month's wages. I would stumble at every step. They would laugh." "Let them laugh," he said. "Let them laugh at me for choosing you." She looked at him in disbelief. "You would endure that? For a deception?" His jaw clenched. "You say that word as though I have not lived my entire life inside a deception. Smiling when I do not wish to. Speaking when I wish to remain silent. Attending banquets when I would rather walk alone in the gardens. This would simply be another mask. But for once it would be one I choose." She pressed her hands together to keep them from shaking. "And when Christmas ends?" she asked. He paused. "Then the immediate danger will have passed," he said. "The foreign princess will have returned home insulted. The ministers will have argued themselves hoarse. My father will be forced to consider the cost of annulling a marriage already presented to the court." Her chest constricted. "So we would not truly be married." He met her gaze. "Not in law, not in the church, but in appearance, in every way that matters to those who watch us, yes." She felt suddenly hollow. "And what will become of me?" she whispered. "When the charade is over." He stepped away from the desk entirely now. His expression changed once more, losing some of its hardness. "That," he said quietly, "is where my promise comes in." She waited. "I will not cast you aside without recompense," he went on. "I swear to you. In return for your cooperation, your courage, your silence, I will see that you are provided for. A house of your own, not a palace, but a respectable cottage outside the city. A small sum to live on, invested in your name. Enough that you will never have to enter service again unless you wish it." She stared at him, unable to look away. A house of her own. She saw in her mind a door that closed, a window with curtains she had chosen, a small table with a single candle, and no one to snatch it away. She saw herself waking to silence that belonged to her. "It is impossible," she whispered. "It is not," he said. "I have already spoken with my personal secretary. The property can be acquired discreetly, the funds arranged." "You spoke of this before seeing whether I would agree?" she asked, startled. "I had to be certain it was within my power to promise it," he replied. "I will not offer you dreams only to let them vanish in the morning. I am not my father." Her mind raced. "If anyone discovers I was a maid," she said, "the deception will be ruined." "I know," he said. "That is why you must accept something else, if you agree." "What?" "You must cease to be a maid from this moment," he said. "Not only in dress, but in manner, in thought. You must allow the palace to believe whatever I tell them about you, that you are of distant but respectable lineage, that you were educated privately, that we met at a small gathering far from the court." She stared. "You mean I must lie?" she said slowly. "Yes," he answered, "and you must lie well. Not with arrogance, with composure, with dignity. You must walk through the fire of their contempt as if you did not feel the heat." Her heart pounded so hard, she thought he must hear it. "It is too much, Your Highness," she said. "I will make mistakes. I will falter. I will shame you." He shook his head. "You underestimate yourself." "You overestimate me," she whispered. He moved closer again, so close now that she could see a faint line at the corner of his mouth, the hint of a scar hidden by the shadow of his jaw. "Why do you think I chose you?" he asked. "Because I was clumsy with porcelain," she managed weakly. A fleeting smile touched his lips. "No," he said softly, "because in the chapel you looked at me and did not see a prince. You saw a man who was tired. And you did not look away out of fear. You looked away out of mercy." She did not know her gaze had softened that day. She had simply been trying not to intrude on a conversation she could not hear. "I have been looked at all my life," he said. "Measured, weighed, judged. It is rare to be seen. You did that, without even meaning to. That is why I chose you." She felt the room press in on her. Her throat ached. "If I agree," she whispered, "and they turn their anger on me, will you protect me?" He did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "I will not allow them to harm you," he said. "Not while you stand beside me. That is the only answer I can give." It was not a promise of miracles. It was not the sweeping vow of a storybook prince. It sounded, strangely, more real. "And if the emperor commands you to cast me out?" she asked. "I will resist him," Leopold said simply, "as far as I am able." She closed her eyes for a moment. The image of the street rose before her, the orphanage, the cold floors, the endless years of carrying trays, of bent backs, of borrowed beds in crowded dormitories. The scullery boy's frightened face swam into view. "You will give me a house?" she asked. "Truly? Even if everything collapses?" "Truly," he said. "And you will not recant your protection when they begin to whisper?" "I have endured whispers since I learned to walk in these corridors," he replied. "Let them whisper louder. I am tired of bending to them." She opened her eyes. "Very well," she whispered. "I will do it." For a moment he did not move. Then he let out a breath, as if he had been holding it for days. "Thank you," he said. The word sounded strange on a prince's tongue, addressed to a maid. "What must I do first?" she asked, her voice barely stronger than a breath. "First," he said, "I must present you to my family, not all at once. My father will come later. For now, only a few." Fear licked up her spine. "Like this?" She glanced down at her plain dress, the damp hem. "Your Highness, they will think you have gone mad." "No," he said, "you will not go like this." He crossed to a smaller door at the side of the study and opened it. "Johann," he called, "send for Fräulein Gerda, and have a suitable gown brought to the antechamber. Something simple but elegant. No embroidery that looks like it was spun from the treasury." A muffled voice answered from the next room. Leopold turned back to Clara. "You will be taken to a dressing room," he said. "Fräulein Gerda will help you change. She is discreet and has no love for the more arrogant branches of the nobility. Listen to her. She will show you how to carry yourself, where to place your hands, how low to curtsy." You will have little time, but it will have to do. What do I say to them? Clara asked, feeling faint. To the princes and princesses? To the cousins and aunts? As little as possible, he said dryly. Smile when appropriate. Do not introduce subjects. Answer briefly, and if you do not know, say so. If they mock you, do not show that it stings. His gaze softened again. You do not have to be perfect, he added. You only have to be brave. She swallowed hard and nodded. A young man in livery appeared in the doorway. Your Highness, Fräulein Gerda is on her way, he said. Good. Leopold gestured toward Clara. Take Fräulein Weiss to the antechamber. From this moment, she is not to be addressed as a maid. Do you understand? The servant blinked, then recovered. Yes, Your Highness. Clara rose from the chair on unsteady legs. Wait, Leopold said. She turned back. He walked closer, studying her, as if committing her face to memory. From this moment on, he said quietly, you must forget you were ever a maid, Clara Weiss. Whatever you feel inside, you will not let it show. You will remember the house waiting for you. You will remember that you are here because you chose to be, not because we dragged you. She nodded. Her voice would not come. He inclined his head, almost like a bow. Come, the young servant murmured at her side. This way, Fräulein. She followed him through the side door into a smaller room lined with wardrobes and mirrors. Fräulein Gerda, a woman in her 30s with a severe bun and intelligent eyes, greeted her without surprise. Between them, they stripped away Clara's worn dress, her old apron, her simple shoes, replacing them with borrowed silk, soft stockings, slippers that did not pinch. Chin up, Gerda said briskly, adjusting the bodice. You have a fine neck. Do not hide it. Clara let herself be turned and pinned and laced. A comb slid through her hair, twisting it into a smooth knot at the back of her head. A pair of pearl earrings brushed her neck like drops of snow. When they were done, Gerda stepped back. Look, she said. Clara turned toward the mirror. For a moment she did not recognize herself. The girl in the glass had the same eyes, the same mouth, the same faint dusting of freckles across the bridge of her nose. But the lines of the gown, the slope of her shoulders, the unfamiliar elegance of her hair, they made her look like someone else entirely. Stand straight, Gerda said quietly. You belong in whatever room you stand in. If you do not believe it, no one else will. Clara tried. She drew a breath, lifted her chin, let her shoulders settle back. Behind her, in the reflection, she saw the door open. Prince Leopold stepped inside, dressed now in a dark formal coat, the sash of his order across his chest. For a moment, he simply looked at her. Yes, he said at last, under his breath. This will do. She turned from the mirror to face him fully. Do I look absurd, Your Highness? She asked. No, he said. You look like someone who might change my fate. Her cheeks warmed. I will try not to fail you, she murmured. He offered his arm. We will fail each other, he said with a trace of grim humor. Repeatedly. The question is whether we will stand again afterward. She placed her hand lightly on his sleeve. His arm was steady, solid beneath the fabric. Are you ready? He asked. No, she admitted. Good, he said. Only fools are ready for such things. He led her toward the main door of the antechamber. On the other side, she knew, lay the first gathering of his family. Brothers, sisters, cousins. People whose opinions weighed more than gold in this palace. Her heart thrummed in her ears. Leopold paused with his hand on the handle. Remember, he murmured, from this moment, you are my wife. Whatever they say, whatever they think, you hold your head as if you believe it. She drew a breath. I will, she said. He pushed the handle down. The door swung open into the bright salon beyond, and the first member of the royal family turned toward them and stepped inside. The first to turn toward them was a young woman in a pale blue gown, her hair arranged with quick, careless elegance. She was not much older than Clara, with the same dark eyes as the prince, but livelier, warmer. A book was tucked into her hand, fingers marking the page. Leopold, she said, you are late. I am exactly on time, he replied. You are simply impatient, Elise. Her gaze slid to Clara, and the teasing light in it faded into surprise. She took in the gown, the pearls, the way Clara's hand rested on Leopold's arm. Oh, she breathed. So the rumor was true. Clara felt her stomach twist. Elise, Leopold said, his tone suddenly formal. "Allow me to present my wife." The words hung in the air. Clara felt them like a tide against her skin. "My wife." Elise blinked once, then set the book down on a side table. "You might have mentioned that your wife was arriving," she said, preferably before she walked into the room. "I did," Leopold replied. "You were reading and waved me away." "That sounds like me," Elise admitted. Her eyes returned to Clara. There was curiosity there, and caution, but not cruelty. "I am Archduchess Elise," she said, stepping closer and offering her hand. "Leopold's younger sister. We had resigned ourselves to him remaining a bachelor until his hair turned grey. You must be very persuasive." Clara inclined her head and took the hand carefully. "I am honored to meet you, Your Imperial Highness," she said. I am Clara." "Clara what?" Elise asked. Clara's tongue stuck. In the rush, she had not thought what name to use. Leopold answered smoothly. "Clara von Weissenthal," he said. "Her family kept to the countryside. It was a quiet arrangement." Elise's brows lifted. "How very romantic," she said, though her tone suggested she was not fully convinced. "I hope, at least, that you had a proper ceremony." "That is between us and God," Leopold said lightly before Clara could falter. Elise studied her a moment longer, then smiled a little. "Well," she said, "you are very brave. The others will not be so gentle. You had better prepare yourself." "The others?" Clara asked. Before Elise could answer, the double doors at the far end of the salon opened wider. A tall young man entered, laughing at something said by the woman beside him. He wore a uniform similar to Leopold's, but his manner was looser, his steps almost careless. The woman on his arm had hair like polished copper and a sharp, beautiful face. "Ah, there he is," the young man announced. "Our vanished heir. We were beginning to think you had eloped." He stopped, then grinned. "Oh, perhaps you did." Leopold's jaw tightened slightly. "Friedrich," he said. "Perfect timing." The young man bowed with exaggerated flourish toward Clara. "Crown Prince Leopold's younger brother," he said, "and your very humble servant for now." The woman with him dipped her head with elegant boredom. "Princess Marianne of Württemberg," she said. "A distant cousin, though not, it seems, distant enough to be of use in the latest family theatricals." Clara curtsied, wishing the floor would open and swallow her. "It is a pleasure," she murmured. "Look at her," Marianne said, ignoring the words. "She is terrified." "Leopold, did you drag this poor girl in from the gardens?" "This poor girl," Leopold said evenly, "is my wife." Friedrich's grin faltered. "Your what?" he asked. "My wife," Leopold repeated. "We have been married privately for some time. I have decided that Advent is as good a season as any to introduce her to the family." Silence fell for a heartbeat. Marianne's fan snapped open with a crack. "And where, pray, has this wife been hiding?" she asked. "In a tower somewhere? How very charming." "I do not care where she was hiding," Elise said sharply. "She is here now." Friedrich looked between them, then studied Clara directly. "Is this true?" he asked her. "You have been secretly married to my brother? All this time?" Yes, Your Highness," she said, forcing the words past numb lips. We wished to avoid unnecessary noise." Friedrich laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Oh, there will be noise," he said. "Very great noise. Father will choke on his wine." "Friedrich," Elise warned. Marianne tilted her head, watching Clara like a cat watching a sparrow. "And from what family does Madame la Princesse come?" she asked. "I confess I have never heard the name Weissenthal mentioned at court." "Our branch kept to itself," Leopold said. "They found court life tiresome." "How sensible of them," Elise murmured. Marianne's eyes flicked over Clara's gown, the way she held herself. "Indeed," she said. "So sensible that they did not even attend the wedding of their own daughter to the heir of the empire." "There were considerations," Leopold replied. "I am sure," Marianne said. "There always are. Well, my dear, I hope you are fond of dancing. The Christmas ball will be intense." She smiled. It did not reach her eyes. Before Clara could attempt an answer, more footsteps sounded in the hall. A cluster of older relatives arrived together, an uncle with a beard that brushed his collar, a severe aunt in heavy black silk, two younger cousins. Their conversation faltered as they saw Leopold and Clara. Introductions began, names blurred together, titles shimmered around her like a dizzying cloud. Leopold's cousins bowed and curtsied with varying degrees of sincerity. Some kissed Clara's hand with careful politeness, others merely inclined their heads, eyes cool. "This is highly irregular," murmured one elderly aunt, her fan fluttering like an anxious bird. "Highly irregular. Perhaps irregularity is in fashion," Elise said under her breath. The salon filled slowly as more nobles arrived, drawn by the rumor that had already begun to spread through the palace. The prince had a wife. The news passed from lip to lip like a spark. "Is it true?" "Surely not. Where has she been? Who is she?" Clara tried to stand straight. She remembered Gerda's voice. "You belong wherever you stand. Believe it or no one else will." She kept her chin up, her hand steady on Leopold's arm. He spoke little of the supposed history of their marriage, offering only a few details with calm assurance. A small ceremony, a narrow church, a priest who had since departed to Rome. The more he said, the more the story solidified, like frost hardening overnight. But each question felt like a needle. "Where did you come out, my dear?" asked a plump countess with an eager smile. "In Vienna or abroad?" I spent most of my time in the countryside," Clara answered carefully. "My education was private." "Ah," the countess said. "How quaint. Do you ride?" asked a cousin with cold blue eyes. "A crown princess must ride well. The people expect to see her on parade." "I have not had much practice," Clara admitted, "but I am willing to learn." The cousin raised a brow. "Willingness does not fix broken bones," he said. "Neither does mockery," Elise muttered nearby. Clara caught the whisper and almost smiled. Not all of them were cruel. Some asked gentle questions. A few even seemed genuinely curious rather than hostile. One grey-haired general bowed deeply. "Your Highness," he said, addressing Clara, "any woman who persuades our prince to defy the council deserves a medal, or at least a toast." "I did not persuade him," Clara said quickly. "He makes his own decisions." The general's eyes glinted with something like approval. "A dangerous habit at court," he said. "Hold on to it. Yet for every kindness, there were 3 slights." "They say you come from a family no one has heard of," murmured a lady in emerald silk. "How refreshing. None of the usual scandals. We shall have to invent entirely new ones." "Your accent," observed an older man. "Where is it from?" "It is not quite Viennese." "I grew up near the river," Clara replied. "We had many visitors from—" "How charming," he interrupted. "Do try not to sound too provincial when you address foreign envoys. They are frightfully sensitive." The words pricked. Clara swallowed them. She began to feel as if she were being weighed on a scale she could not see. Every word, every breath, every tiny misstep recorded. In the midst of this, the woman everyone seemed to part for appeared at the door. "Countess Amalia von Langen," someone whispered. "She has come." Clara turned her head. Countess Amalia was not young, but she was striking. Her dark hair was threaded with silver, twisted into a smooth coil at the nape of her neck. Her gown was simple but impeccably cut. Her gaze swept the room and landed on Leopold first, then drifted to Clara. "Your Highness," she said, dipping in a shallow, practiced curtsy. "Countess," Leopold replied, "thank you for joining us." "It is difficult to stay away when the palace is buzzing like a beehive," she said. Her eyes remained on Clara. "One hears so many things." "I imagine one hears more than one wishes," Leopold said. "Sometimes," she agreed. "And sometimes one hears exactly what one has been expecting all along." She extended her hand toward Clara. "And this," she said, "must be the young woman who has caused such a stir." Clara took her hand. It was cool and firm. "I am honored, Countess," she said. "Prince Leopold has spoken of you." "Has he?" Amalia's brows lifted. "How disconcerting. I hope only flattering lies." Clara tried to answer, but the Countess did not wait. "Tell me, child," Amalia said, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. "Where did you grow up?" "In the countryside, Countess," Clara replied, repeating the phrase that had become her shield. "Our family preferred quiet places." "In which region?" Amalia persisted. Clara's heart skipped. They had not agreed on a specific region. "Near the river," she said. "We moved often." "Really?" Amalia's smile widened by a fraction. How restless. And your father, what title did he hold? None that would interest the court, Leopold interjected smoothly. The Weissenthal line was modest but respectable. I would be the judge of what interests me, Amalia said, not taking her eyes from Clara. And your education, my dear? Were you sent to any of the convent schools? I know many of the abbesses. I do not recall hearing your name. My education was private, Clara said. At home. Ah, Amalia tilted her head. Home tutors. How charming. Then you will know, of course, the St. Lucia tradition. We country families are fond of it. The St. Lucia tradition, Clara repeated, trying not to show her panic. Yes, Amalia said. On the 13th of December. In our region, we always light 3 candles in a particular order. I am curious whether your family did the same. Clara searched frantically in her memory. Orphanage traditions. The customs in the city house where she had worked. Nothing matched. She swallowed, sometimes lit candles for the season, Countess, but not always in the same way. My mother believed the intention mattered more than the order. There was a brief silence. Amalia's smile did not falter, but her eyes hardened. How unconventional, she said softly. Elise stepped in. Countess, she said briskly, if you begin testing my brother's wife on every minor custom, we shall be here until Easter. Perhaps you can interrogate her later. For now at least let her breathe. I am only making conversation, Amalia replied. It seems one must be careful about that now. She withdrew her hand at last and moved away, leaving behind a thin trail of perfume and unease. Clara's fingers trembled where they rested on Leopold's arm. What is she to you? She whispered when Amalia was out of earshot. A cousin of sorts, he said. More importantly, she is my father's favorite advisor on matters of society. She has been arranging marriages and alliances for years. She believes the empire is her chessboard, and I am a piece she does not recognize, Clara said. For now, he replied. Pieces can become powerful when moved correctly. The afternoon stretched. Conversations swirled around them. Clara answered questions. She smiled, nodded, endured. At one point, a younger princess approached, no more than 14, with fair braids and bright eyes. Is it true? The girl asked bluntly. Did you marry my brother in a secret ceremony without telling anyone? Anna, Elise hissed. Mind your tongue. It is all they are talking about, Anna protested. In the schoolroom, in the corridors. Even Frau Metzger is gossiping. Clara stiffened. Frau Metzger, the housekeeper. It is true that the ceremony was private, Clara said gently. Sometimes the most important things happen quietly. Anna seemed to consider that. Do you love him? She asked suddenly. Clara's breath caught. She glanced at Leopold, then back at Anna. I respect him. I wish to stand beside him. Perhaps love grows from such things. Anna wrinkled her nose. I suppose, she said. I think I shall marry for adventure. Or not at all. You say that now, Elise said. Wait until father hears. I will tell him I wish to join a convent of explorers, Anna replied. Do those exist? Leopold gave a short laugh. If they do, he said, I shall send you there myself. Anna smiled at Clara, unexpectedly warm. I am glad he chose someone who looks kind, she said. The portraits of foreign princesses are very frightening. Then she skipped away. Clara watched her go with a strange ache in her chest. For a moment, she almost forgot her own fear and thought only of the weight these children would one day bear. The gathering finally began to thin. Some nobles drifted away to prepare for dinners, writing letters, endless obligations. The room grew quieter. Leopold leaned toward Clara. You have endured enough for one afternoon, he murmured. Come, I will show you something less awful than my relations. She let him guide her out through a side door, into a narrower corridor lined with windows. Outside, snow was falling more heavily, muffling the city below. For a few minutes they walked in silence. Clara's legs ached from standing so long. Her head buzzed with voices. I did badly, she said at last. You did not, he answered. You did remarkably. I have seen seasoned diplomats crumble under fewer questions. I stumbled, she insisted. I did not know the candle tradition. I did not have an answer ready. Countess Amalia saw it. She was not looking for an answer, he said. She was looking for a weakness. She would have found one no matter what you said. And the others? Some are fools, he said. Some are cruel. Some are simply afraid of change. He stopped near a window, and they stood side by side, looking at the courtyard. Do you regret your decision? He asked quietly. Her first instinct was to say yes. To say she wanted to go back to the kitchens, to the scrubbed floors and calloused hands, to a life where her mistakes broke only porcelain, not reputations. But the memory of the mirror rose before her. The unfamiliar woman in the gown, the glimpse of herself standing straight, and behind all that the vision of the small house he had promised, a key in her own hand. No, she said slowly, I am afraid, but I do not regret it. Not yet, he nodded. If it becomes too much, he said, tell me. Do not try to carry it alone. She almost laughed. You are the crown prince, she said. It is not my place to trouble you with my fears. It is precisely your place, he replied. If you are to be my wife in their eyes, then you must also be my ally in truth. Otherwise we are only acting for ghosts. She looked at him. You speak as if you are alone, she said. Do you truly have no one to confide in? He was quiet for a long moment. There are people who love me, he said at last. In their way, my mother before she died, Elise, even father in his own twisted fashion, but there are few who can listen without seeing the crown first. And you think I do not see it, she said softly. I think you see it, he answered. But you also see the man beneath. She turned her gaze back to the snow. That may be because I am more accustomed to men than crowns, she said. Scrubbing floors does not leave much time to worship. He smiled faintly. Good, he said. I would rather you never worship me. They stood there a moment longer. The quiet between them was not entirely comfortable, but it was not hostile either. It felt like the narrow ledge between two cliffs. A bell rang in the distance, marking the hour. I must attend a council meeting, he said reluctantly. They will expect an explanation, or at least a performance. And I, she asked. You will be given chambers nearer the family quarters, he said. Modest but respectable. It would not do for anyone to see the future princess emerging from the servants' wing. The words made her stomach flutter. Will I serve at table tonight? She asked, half in jest. No, he said. You will rest, and perhaps speak with Fräulein Gerda again. She will teach you how to move in the ballroom without breaking anyone's feet. That would be a mercy, Clara said. He looked at her, the concern returning to his eyes. Clara, he said quietly, whatever they do, whatever they say, remember what we agreed. At the end of this, you walk away with a life of your own. No one can take that from you, not even me. If the deception is exposed, she said, they will call me a liar, a fraud. They may cast me out in disgrace. Your promise will be worth nothing. He shook his head. The property is already being arranged, he said. In your name, they can strip me of many things, but not of the power to give you that. She searched his face. Why do you care? She asked. Truly, you could have chosen a noblewoman for this deception, someone more practiced in these games. That would have defeated the point, he replied. And as for why I care, perhaps I'm selfish. Perhaps I wish, for once in my life, to do a reckless thing that does not crush someone who had no say in the matter. But I did have a say, she murmured. Yes, he said. You did. And you chose to walk into the fire with me. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, approaching. A servant appeared at the far end, bowing. Your Highness, he called, the council is assembled. Leopold straightened. Very well, he said. Clara, Johann will escort you to your new chambers. I will come to see you later this evening if I am not drowned in documents. She nodded. Go then, she said. I will try not to disgrace you in your absence. He hesitated, then did something unexpected. He took her hand briefly, where it rested on the window ledge, and squeezed it once. You did not disgrace me today, he said. They did that themselves. Then he released her hand and walked away, his footsteps firm, his shoulders squared as if stepping onto a battlefield only he could see. Johann appeared beside her. This way, Fräulein, he said gently. Your chambers are not far. They walked in silence at first. Clara's thoughts buzzed like angry bees. Johann, she asked suddenly, have you served the prince for long? 6 years, he said, since I was 15. Then you know the court better than I do, she said. "A stone knows the river that wears it down," he replied. "Whether that is better, I do not know." She huffed a short, surprised breath. As they turned a corner, voices drifted from a half-open door ahead. Low, urgent. The kind of tone people used when they did not want to be overheard, but could not keep silent. "I tell you, it is madness," a woman's voice said. "They say she was in the servants' wing only last week, carrying linens." Clara froze. Johann took a step, then realized she had stopped and turned back. "Fräulein," he murmured, "is something the matter?" She lifted a hand, pressing a finger to her lips. He hesitated, then fell still. From the open doorway the voices continued. "The prince called for her himself," another woman said, "and now she walks on his arm as if she were born to it." "A maid." "A maid does not become a princess," the first woman snapped, "not without something else beneath it. Countess Amalia says she has already sent word to the council." "What kind of word?" the second asked, half fearful, half eager. "An inquiry," the first said, "into the girl's past, where she came from, who she served." She used the word investigation. And another, the voice dropped even lower, "unmasking." The second woman gasped. "Do you think the prince knows?" "Of course he does not," the first replied, "or he would never have chosen so carelessly. But Countess Amalia will dig. She always does. And when she finds what she is looking for—" Her voice trailed off into a meaningful silence. Johann shifted uncomfortably. "Fräulein," he whispered, "we should not intrude." Clara's heart hammered in her ears. Her hand was cold where it clutched her skirt. Investigation. Unmasking. She drew back from the door as quietly as she could. The corridor swam before her eyes for a moment. "Are you well?" Johann asked, concern in his voice. "You look pale." "I am fine," she lied. "Just tired." He did not look convinced, but he did not press her. They walked on. Her new chambers were modest but pleasant. A small sitting room, a bedchamber, a washstand. Far grander than anything she had ever known. Normally, she would have marveled at the carved bed, the embroidered coverlet. Now she barely saw them. When Johann left, bowing himself out, Clara sank onto the edge of the bed. Countess Amalia was already moving against her, already pulling on threads that could unravel everything. If the Countess discovered that Clara had been a maid, not in some distant household but in this very palace, the deception would crumble in an instant. The nobles would riot. The Emperor would rage, and Leopold— She pressed a hand to her mouth. Would he still keep his promise to her then, when the court demanded a sacrifice, or would he let her fall to save himself? The Emperor did not keep him waiting. Leopold was summoned to his father's private audience room before the morning bells had finished ringing. The corridors to that wing were deserted, the carpets swallowing his footsteps. Guards in dark uniforms stood like statues by the doors. The chamberlain bowed and opened the heavy door. "His Imperial Majesty will see you now, Your Highness." Leopold stepped inside. The room was not large. His father disliked grandeur in private spaces. A fire burned low in the grate. A single high-backed chair stood at the far end, a table beside it with a silver coffee service. Emperor Franz sat in the chair, back straight, hands resting on the carved arms. "Close the door," he said. The door shut behind Leopold with a soft thud. For a moment, father and son simply looked at one another. The Emperor's hair was more grey than black now. Deep lines cut from nose to mouth, from brows to temples. His gaze was sharp as ever. "Well," Franz said at last, "you have been busy." Leopold inclined his head. "Good morning, father." "Do not waste my time with pleasantries," the Emperor replied. "I have a stack of petitions taller than your sister and ministers who wish to resign because they cannot endure another month of your obstinacy." Leopold folded his hands behind his back. "I assume this is about my marriage," he said. Franz's eyes flashed. "Your marriage," he repeated. "You speak as if it were a small matter, as if you had merely changed tailors without consulting me." "It is not a small matter," Leopold said quietly, "which is why I did not treat it as such." The Emperor's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. "You have embarrassed the crown," he said. "You have insulted a foreign court that has been our ally for decades. You have thrown months of careful negotiation into the fire because you suddenly decided to play at romance." Leopold's jaw clenched. "This is not a game," he said. Everything is a game to men who have never lost, Franz snapped. You have no idea what it is to watch a map change color because someone loved foolishly. I will not see this empire weakened by sentiment. She is not a sentiment, Leopold said. Oh, then what is she? His father demanded. No one has heard of this Clara von Weissenthal. There are no records of her family in the registers. Countess Amalia has already informed me that she suspects deception. Leopold kept his expression calm. Countess Amalia suspects deception every time someone breathes, he said. It is how she keeps herself entertained. Do not be flippant, Franz warned. Where did you meet this girl? How long have you known her? Who are her parents? Leopold hesitated, then took a breath. I met her in the chapel, he said. Some weeks ago. She was praying after Mass. I learned her family kept to the countryside. Her parents are dead. You married an orphan? Franz's voice rose. Without consulting me? Without consulting anyone? Yes, Leopold said. I married a woman I believed suited to stand beside me. You did not marry her, Franz retorted. I have spoken to the Archbishop. There is no record of such a ceremony. Leopold's pulse jumped. He had expected that. I did not say the ceremony was public, he replied. I said we are joined. The formality can be rectified. Franz's eyes narrowed. You lied to the court, he said slowly. You stood before your family and presented a woman as your wife when she is not. I presented her as the woman I intend to make my wife, Leopold answered. I did what you have always taught me. I acted decisively. The Emperor rose from his chair with sudden energy. Do not twist my words, he said. Do not hide behind half-truths. This Clara has no place here, you know that. The nobles will never accept her, the people will laugh. You will look a fool, and I will look weak. He took a step closer. You will marry the Württemberg princess as planned. Leopold did not step back. No, he said. The word hung in the air like a crack of ice. Franz stared at him. Say that again, he said softly. No, Leopold repeated. I will not marry a woman I do not choose. I will not tie my life to a treaty that may not survive the decade. I will not put a stranger beside me on the throne while I am still breathing. You presume you will reach the throne, Franz said. You presume I will place a crown on the head of a man who cannot even obey one clear command. And you presume I will be an emperor who commands obedience without earning respect, Leopold shot back. If you force this marriage, the people will see it. They will see that nothing has changed, that we are the same as every generation before us. The people, Franz scoffed. The people want bread and peace. They do not care who warms your bed. I care, Leopold said. They stood in silence for a moment, breathing hard. At last, the Emperor moved away, pacing once across the room. When he turned back, some of the heat had left his eyes. In its place was something colder. You leave me with few options, he said. If I drag you to the altar, you will stand like a condemned man. The foreign court will see it. The newspapers will feast on it. If I annul your connection with this girl, I risk making a martyr of her. The people love a martyr, especially a pretty one from humble beginnings. Leopold's chest tightened. She is more than a symbol, he said. Perhaps, Franz allowed, but she is also an instrument. You have made her one, whether you intended it or not. He walked back to his chair and sank into it, suddenly looking older. Very well, he said. Here is what I will do. You have until the end of the Christmas festivities to prove that this choice of yours will not damage the crown beyond repair. I will not announce anything until then. If, by the end of the season, the court has not revolted, the ministers have not resigned, and the people have not gathered at the gates with torches, I will consider recognizing this marriage. Consider, he repeated. I promise nothing, but I will not close the door entirely. Leopold frowned. And if they do revolt? He asked. Then I will do what must be done, Franz replied. I will declare that you acted without my knowledge, that you were misled by a girl who sought to raise herself above her station. I will annul any ceremony that may have taken place. She will be sent away, far away. You will beg forgiveness in public and marry as you were told. Leopold's hands curled into fists. You would punish her for my decision, he said. I would protect the empire, Franz answered coldly. One girl is a small price to pay. You of all people should understand that. Leopold looked at his father, really looked at him. The lines in the emperor's face, the weariness in his shoulders, the fear buried under anger. "I understand that you have forgotten what it is to be that one girl," he said quietly. "Mother was not born to a throne either." Franz's mouth thinned. "Do not bring your mother into this." "You loved her," Leopold pressed. "You defied your own father to marry her. I have heard the stories." "That was different," Franz said through his teeth. "Your mother was the daughter of a prince. She was of royal blood. This Clara is no one." "She is not no one," Leopold said. "She is the only person in this palace who looks at me without calculation in her eyes." Franz looked at him for a long time. "At the end of Christmas," he repeated, "you will have your answer. Until then, I will not interfere publicly. Privately, I will not restrain those who question your choice. If this Clara is as strong as you believe, she will endure. If she is not, perhaps you will learn something about the difference between impulse and duty." "It is not duty to break a woman to make a point," Leopold said. "It is duty to ensure the empire survives you," Franz retorted. "You think only of your own heart. I must think of millions." He lifted a hand, dismissing him. "You may go. Send Countess Amalia to me. I wish to hear her report." Leopold hesitated. "If you allow her to attack Clara," he said, "you will make an enemy of me." Franz gave a faint, humorless smile. "You have been my enemy since the day you learned to say no," he replied. "Go, Leopold. Do what you can or what you think you can." Leopold bowed stiffly and left the room, his mind already racing ahead. He had until Christmas. Outside, in the palace, the day moved forward. Clara did not know the particulars of the Emperor's ultimatum. She only felt the change in the air. Servants watched her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Some bowed deeper than necessary when she passed, as if practicing for a future when she might hold power. Others barely inclined their heads, their eyes sliding away, unwilling to acknowledge her at all. She spent the morning with Fräulein Gerda in a private salon, learning how to walk in a gown without tripping. "Short steps," Gerda said. "Pretend your skirts are water. You move through them, not against them." Clara tried. The silk whispered around her ankles. "Now turn," Gerda instructed. "If someone addresses you from behind, you must not pivot like a soldier. Gently. Let your shoulder lead." Clara turned, feeling foolish. Gerda clucked. "Better. Try it again, and stop looking as if you are about to be struck." "That is how I feel," Clara admitted. Gerda's face softened. "I know," she said. "But they must not see it. Fear draws cruelty like sugar draws flies." They practiced curtsies, hand placements, the angle of the head when greeting someone above or below her supposed rank. The rules tangled in Clara's mind like threads. She had always known the etiquette of servants, how to vanish, how to listen without being visible, how to anticipate needs. This was the opposite. This was learning to be seen without flinching. Between exercises, she stole glances at the door, waiting for Leopold. He arrived in the afternoon, looking tired but composed. "How was it?" he asked, watching her walk across the room in the pale practice gown. "I have learned not to stab my own feet," she said. "It feels like a triumph." Gerda nodded approvingly. "She learns quickly," she said. "She will manage if the others do not eat her alive." "That is what I am here to prevent," Leopold said. Gerda snorted. "Then you had better grow teeth, Your Highness. Countess Amalia has already spoken to half the court. She is sharpening her knives." Leopold's eyes darkened. "What have you heard?" he asked. "Rumors," Gerda said. "Nothing concrete yet, but she has been asking questions of the servants, where Clara came from, who she worked for before. She suspects something." "She suspects the truth," Clara said quietly, "that I was scrubbing floors a week ago." Leopold looked at her. "She has no proof," he said. "We are not the only household with servants. We will say you were visiting a relative among the staff, or inspecting the kitchens, or whatever nonsense satisfies their curiosity for a day." "It will not satisfy Amalia," Gerda said. "She does not like to be surprised, especially not by women she did not groom herself." Leopold frowned. "I will speak with her," he said. "Carefully," Gerda warned. "She is not your direct enemy. She serves the Emperor." "She serves herself," Leopold corrected. "The Emperor is simply the tallest shield to hide behind." Gerda inclined her head. "Perhaps. But shields are useful in a storm. Do not kick them away." She left them then, muttering about seamstresses and hems. Clara sank onto a chair, steadying her breathing. "You saw your father?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "And?" "He is furious," Leopold said plainly. "But he will not act immediately. He has given me until the end of Christmas to prove that this will not destroy the empire." "And if you fail?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Then he will attempt to annul any union between us and send you away," he said. "Far enough that you cannot be used against us." Clara's fingers knotted in her skirt. "Send me away where?" she asked. "He did not specify," Leopold said. "A convent, perhaps, or a distant estate, somewhere out of sight." "And you?" she said. "What will you do if he commands it?" He hesitated. "I will fight him," he said. "I do not yet know how. But I will not simply bow and walk away." She studied his face. "He is the emperor," she said. "You are still his son. He holds all the power." "No," Leopold replied. "He holds much, not all." She shook her head. "You speak as if the people will rise up for a servant," she said. "They will not. They have their own burdens." "They might not rise for you," he said. "They might rise for what you represent." "I do not wish to be a representation," she said fiercely. "I wish to be a woman with a roof over her head and a life that does not depend on the emperor's mood." He looked at her for a long moment. "I know," he said softly. "That is why I promised you that house." "And if he strips you of the means to keep that promise," she insisted, "if he takes everything from you to make an example, what then? Will you still think of my roof?" He smiled faintly. "You think very highly of my father's capacity for spite," he said, "but not of my capacity for preparation." "What do you mean?" she asked. "The property is not purchased in my name," he said. "It is in the name of a trust. That trust has already signed the papers. Even if he freezes my personal accounts, he cannot reach what he does not know is connected to me." She stared. "You knew he might strike at you," she said, "and you planned for it." "Of course," he replied. "I have lived with him for 25 years. I know his first thoughts before he does." "And yet you still dared to defy him," she murmured. He tilted his head. "I dared to choose," he said. "There is a difference." A knock sounded at the door. "Enter," Leopold called. Johann peeked in. "Your Highness," he said. "Countess Amalia requests a word." Leopold's brows rose. "Does she?" he said. "How prompt." Clara tensed. "Shall I go?" she asked. "Perhaps it is better if she does not see us together." "No," he said. "Stay. I would rather she speak openly than whisper in corridors." Johann bowed and stepped aside. Countess Amalia entered without haste. Her gown today was dark wine red, her hair pinned with a single pearl comb. She looked around the room, taking in Clara, the discarded practice shoes, the open window. "How cozy," she said. "Lessons for our new princess?" "Precisely," Leopold said. "We wish to avoid any unfortunate incidents at the ball. It would be a shame if she tripped into a foreign ambassador." "I imagine she would be forgiven," Amalia replied, "at least once. Men are surprisingly tolerant of pretty disasters." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You wish to speak with me, Countess?" Leopold prompted. "Yes," she said, "and with your chosen companion. I think it is time we dispensed with the pretense that this concerns only you." Leopold's expression cooled. "Be careful," he said softly. "You stand in the presence of your future crown princess." Amalia's lips curved. "Or your temporary amusement," she said. "We shall see." She turned to Clara. "Tell me, child, how are you finding your first days among us?" "Challenging," Clara said honestly, "but instructive." "Instructive," Amalia repeated. "Such a polite word. Have you learned yet that every smile at court has teeth behind it?" "Some do," Clara said. "Some do not." "And what do you think of mine?" Amalia asked. Clara forced herself to meet the woman's gaze. "I think you smile as if you expect others to flinch," she said quietly. "And they usually do." There was a brief silence. Leopold looked startled. Johann, near the door, kept his eyes studiously on the floor. Amalia's brows rose. "Interesting," she said. "Most people flatter me. You simply describe me. Perhaps the prince is right about your honesty." "And perhaps you are wrong about everything else," Leopold said. Amalia ignored him. "You understand, Clara," she said, "that this situation you have entered is delicate." Yes, Countess, Clara replied. There are those who believe you have bewitched the prince, Amalia went on. That you lured him into a secret marriage to raise yourself. Clara's stomach twisted. I did no such thing, she said. He approached me. I did not seek him out. Amalia waved a hand. It hardly matters who stepped toward whom first, she said. Perception is reality here. You must remember that. You may be blameless in your own eyes, yet guilty in theirs, simply by existing. I cannot help existing, Clara said, before she could stop herself. Amalia's mouth quirked. No, she said. That would be too much to ask. But you can help how you do it, for your own sake. Leopold frowned. Are you threatening her? He asked. On the contrary, Amalia said. I am warning her. There is a difference. She looked back at Clara. I have made inquiries, she said. You must not take offense. It is my duty to protect this family from unfortunate surprises. Inquiries? Leopold repeated. Yes, Amalia said. I asked the usual questions. Where she came from, who her people are, what her upbringing was like. I find it curious that no one seems to have known of the Weissenthal family before yesterday. We kept to ourselves, Clara said, hearing the lie and hating it. So I heard, Amalia replied. From everyone, word for word. She took a step closer, her voice softening. Listen to me, child, she said. Whatever you are hiding will come to light. That is the nature of palaces. Secrets sink here. They never float. When they are dredged up, it is never gentle. If you have any sense, you will tell the truth now and spare yourself. Clara's hands gripped her skirts. I have told the truth I am allowed to tell, she said. Allowed. Amalia seized on the word. By whom? Clara's throat tightened. Leopold stepped between them. By her husband, he said. Me. If you wish to question anyone's story, question mine. Do not badger her. Amalia sighed. You are making this worse, she said. You always did have a talent for that. We will not discuss this further, Leopold said. You may dislike my choice, but you will respect it. Until my father decides otherwise, Clara is under my protection. Your protection, Amalia echoed. How noble. I shall be very interested to see how far that protection extends when the Emperor calls for a reckoning. She turned toward the door. Enjoy your lessons, she said over her shoulder. I do hope you include some history. It is useful to know the stories of girls who flew too close to the sun. They rarely end well. She left. Silence settled in her wake. Johann exhaled quietly, as if he had been holding his breath the entire time. Charming woman, he murmured. Leopold pinched the bridge of his nose. She knows something, he said, or thinks she does. She knows enough to be dangerous, Clara said quietly. Perhaps she has already spoken to Frau Metzger, or other servants. Leopold looked at her. We will be more careful, he said. I will instruct the staff not to speak of your past to anyone. They will be afraid, Clara said. Countess Amalia can make their lives unpleasant. And I can dismiss her from court, he said. She shook her head. You cannot, she said. She is too close to your father. If you attack her, he will see it as an attack on him. He smiled thinly. You are learning quickly, he said. She did not feel proud of that. The days that followed moved faster. Clara was drawn into a whirl of preparation. There were fittings for gowns, lessons in dance with a patient dancing master who counted time aloud and swore under his breath when she turned left instead of right. Feel the music, he insisted. Do not fight it. Let it carry you. I have spent my life carrying things, she replied. Not being carried. He laughed in spite of himself. Leopold joined some of the lessons when he could, his hand steady at her waist, his instructions gentler than the dancing master's. Do not stare at your feet, he murmured. They know where to go if you trust them. I trust my feet, she said. It is the rest of me I doubt. Then trust me, he answered. Sometimes she did, and the steps flowed. For a moment they moved together without thinking, the world shrinking to the space between them. In quieter moments, he spoke to her of the court, who would side with his father, who might be persuaded to accept a common-born princess, who would never forgive such an insult to tradition. There are some lords, he said one evening as they walked along an inner gallery, who care more about their hunting dogs than their daughter's happiness, yet they will lecture me about honor. And what do you care about? She asked. He considered. Less than I should, he said, more than they think. I care about this country. I care about the children I see shivering outside the palace gates. I care about the men who come back from the border with missing limbs and empty eyes. I care about my sister's laugh, which grows rarer every year. And me? She asked, before she could stop herself. He looked at her quickly. You, he said slowly, I am beginning to care about in ways I did not plan. Her breath caught. You should not, she said. We made an agreement, a house, a season, an end. Yes, he said. I remember. Our bargain. I am not proposing that we burn it. Then do not add kindling, she said, heart pounding. He gave a soft, rueful laugh. I do not know how to stop, he admitted. It seems my heart did not receive the memorandum about limits. She looked away, her cheeks warm. Then perhaps mine must be the sensible one, she said. Perhaps, he agreed. Or perhaps neither of us has ever truly been allowed to feel anything without permission, and now that we have stolen a little freedom, we do not know what to do with it. She did not answer. She did not know how. The court, meanwhile, hummed like a disturbed hive. Whispers followed Clara through halls and salons. Did you see her yesterday? She spoke to the ambassador's wife as if they were equals. She mispronounced that French name. She did not know the motto of the Württemberg house. How can she be queen if she does not know such things? She is pretty. I will grant her that. The people will like her face, if nothing else. Faces fade. Blood does not. Countess Amalia moved among them, her smile smooth, her ears open. She asked servants quiet questions in corners. She examined old guest lists, old ledgers, old budget reports. In the servants' wing, tension grew. Some avoided Clara's eyes entirely when their paths crossed, afraid that any connection with her might bring trouble. Others gave her small nods, almost invisible, as if to say, I remember. I will not tell. Frau Metzger kept her distance. Her usual sharp comments were absent. That more than anything frightened Clara. Silence was worse than scolding. On the morning before Christmas Eve, as the palace buzzed with preparations for the grand ball, Clara went looking for a quiet place to breathe. She found it in a little used corridor near the north wing, where tall windows looked out over the snow-covered gardens. The air was cold. Her breath clouded in front of her. She pressed her forehead briefly against the glass. Are you hiding? A voice said behind her. She turned. Elise stood in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl, her cheeks pink from the chill. A little, Clara admitted. Is that terribly un-princess-like? It is terribly human, Elise said. Which is much rarer here. She came to stand beside her. They are decorating the ballroom, Elise said. Father insisted on evergreens from the imperial forests. They have dragged in half the mountains. Will it be very grand? Clara asked. Yes, Elise said. And suffocating, and beautiful, and cruel. That is a great many things to be at once, Clara murmured. Welcome to court, Elise said. They stood in silence for a moment. Elise, Clara said quietly, may I ask you something? And have you answer as a sister, not as a princess. Elise glanced at her. I will try, she said, though I have never been anyone's sister in quite this situation. If they discover who I am, Clara said, who I was, what will they do? Elise's face grew serious. They will pretend to be shocked, she said, even though half of them have taken lovers from the stables and the kitchens. They will say you deceived them. They will insist Leopold put you aside. Some will demand you be punished, sent away. And you? Clara asked. What will you do? Elise took a breath. I will be angry, she said, at you for lying to me, at Leopold for making you lie, at Father for not understanding that all of this could have been avoided if he had listened in the first place. But I will not forget that you are a person, not a scandal, and I will not let them break you without a fight. Clara's eyes stung. Thank you, she said. Do not thank me yet, Elise replied. We have not reached the end of this play. Footsteps echoed at the far end of the corridor. Anna appeared, her braids swinging. There you are, she said. Everyone is looking for you. Clara, the seamstresses are in a panic. They say your gown for tonight needs one last fitting. If you move, the whole skirt may fall off. That would be one way to be remembered, Elise remarked. Clara sighed. I am coming, she said. I should not keep them waiting. As they turned away from the window, a figure moved in the shadows near the stairwell. Countess Amalia, half concealed by a column, watched them with unreadable eyes. By late afternoon, the palace had transformed. Candles waited unlit along the walls. Garlands of evergreen and red berries looped from balcony to balcony in the ballroom. The orchestra tuned their instruments. Footmen polished banisters until they gleamed. Clara stood on a small platform in her bedchamber, while seamstresses fluttered around her like birds. "Hold still," one muttered, pinning the hem. "If you breathe too deeply, the bodice will tear." "That seems unwise," Clara said. "I cannot promise not to breathe." A laugh came from the doorway. "Do not worry," Elise said. "If she does faint, half the room will swoon with her." She entered, followed by Gerda. Clara glanced down at herself. The gown for the ball was unlike anything she had ever worn, deep blue with the slightest shimmer when she moved, the neckline modest but graceful, the skirt full but not absurdly so. "I look like someone else," she murmured. "You look like the version of yourself they will accept," Gerda said. "That is the closest thing to magic I can offer." When the seamstresses finally left, satisfied, Gerda stayed to adjust Clara's hair one last time. "I will be the candle in the center of the room tonight," she said. "Everyone will be watching." "That is a comfort," Clara replied dryly. Gerda squeezed her shoulder. "Remember," she said, "if you stumble, stumble with your head high. They will not know whether it is a new dance step." When Clara was alone again for a moment, she sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, listening to the muffled sounds of the palace through the walls. A knock sounded. "Come in," she called. Leopold stepped inside. He wore full formal dress, dark uniform, decorations, the sash of the Order of the Golden Fleece. His hair was neat. His expression, for once, held no trace of humor. He stopped when he saw her. "You are staring," she said, to cover her nervousness. "Forgive me," he said. "I was not prepared." "For what?" she asked. "For the fact that you would make half the court forget their own names," he said. She shook her head. "You exaggerate," she said. "Not enough," he replied. He came closer, his gaze searching her face. "How do you feel?" he asked. "As if I am about to step onto a frozen lake," she said, "unsure which step will send me through the ice." He nodded slowly. "I will be beside you," he said. "If the ice cracks, we will fall together." "That is a very poor reassurance," she said. "I never claimed to be a poet," he answered. She smiled despite herself. He offered his arm. "Shall we?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Before I lose my courage." They walked together through the corridors toward the ballroom. The sounds grew louder. The murmur of voices, the test notes of violins, the shuffle of shoes. At the top of the grand staircase, the master of ceremonies waited, his ledger in hand. "Your Highnesses," he said, bowing. "When you are ready, I will announce you." Leopold glanced at Clara. "Take a breath," he whispered. She obeyed. The doors opened. The master of ceremonies raised his staff and struck the floor. "Their Imperial Highnesses," he proclaimed, his voice ringing out. "Crown Prince Leopold and his consort Clara von Weissenthal." Hundreds of faces turned toward them. For a moment Clara could not move. The room swam. Glittering lights, swirling colors, eyes upon eyes upon eyes. Leopold's arm under her hand felt solid. "One step at a time," he murmured. "That is all a life is. One step, then another." She moved. They descended the staircase slowly, the murmur in the room growing, then fading into an expectant hush. When they reached the floor, Leopold led her to the center. The orchestra went silent. He bowed to her. She curtsied to him as they had practiced. The first notes of the waltz began. They danced. At first her feet stumbled. The steps she thought she knew fled. But his hand was firm at her back, his voice low. "Left," he murmured. "Now turn. Good. Do you hear it? Let it carry you. Do not fight." She tried. Gradually the music seeped into her bones. The room blurred. The faces at the edges became less distinct. There was only the pattern: forward, side, close, turn, forward, side, close. His hand, his shoulder, the steady rhythm of his breathing. When the first dance ended, there was a brief silence, then applause. Clara flushed. It might have been polite, obligatory. It might have been genuine. She could not tell. They danced again, with others this time. Foreign dignitaries, local nobles. Some partners were awkward, others skilled. Some spoke kindly. Others made barbed remarks under their breath. "You have caused quite a sensation," said a visiting baron, smiling as he spun her. "Our newspapers will enjoy this. A maid in a borrowed crown." She stiffened. "I am not a maid," she said. "Not anymore." "So they say," he replied. "We shall see." The comment stung. Between dances, she returned to Leopold's side, drawing strength from his presence. He watched the room like a general on a battlefield, noting who approached, who hung back, who whispered behind their fans. At the edge of the crowd, Countess Amalia stood near the master of ceremonies, speaking quietly. In her hand was a folded, sealed document. Clara's gaze snagged on it. "What is it?" Leopold asked, following her eyes. "Nothing," she said quickly. "I only need some air." He frowned. "Do not go far," he said. "The terrace is crowded with smokers. I will stay inside," she promised. She slipped away, heart pounding. Near the rear of the ballroom, a narrow door stood half open, leading to a small antechamber the musicians sometimes used to rest. Clara stepped through it, grateful for the relative quiet. She meant only to stand a moment, to breathe. Then she heard voices. "Are you certain?" the master of ceremonies asked. "This is highly irregular, Countess." "We live in irregular times," Amalia replied. "The emperor must be informed, and the court. They have a right to know who stands beside their future sovereign." Clara moved closer, staying behind a heavy curtain that partially screened the room. Through a gap in the fabric, she saw them. Amalia facing the master of ceremonies, holding out the sealed paper. "Here," Amalia said, "these are the records from the household office. They show exactly where little Clara was serving only last week. Her assignments, her wages, her status." The master of ceremonies took the document with hesitant fingers. "And you wish me to—" he began. "To announce it," Amalia said, "at the appropriate moment, perhaps after the next set of dances. A simple correction. Her Highness, formerly Clara Weiss, maid of the imperial household. It will cause a stir, of course, but better a controlled storm than a hidden rot." The master of ceremonies swallowed. "Countess, this could humiliate her," he said. The prince, Amalia cut in, "has been reckless. Someone must protect him from himself. Better a sharp lesson now than a coup later." Clara's blood ran cold as the countess pressed the sealed document into the man's reluctant hand. For a heartbeat, Clara could not move. The room seemed to tilt, the floor swaying beneath her feet. Her fingers dug into the curtain. "They will tear her apart," the master of ceremonies whispered, "in front of everyone." "They will adjust," Amalia replied. "Truth has that effect. Better they know she was a maid now than discover it in some uglier way later." "But the prince will survive," Amalia said, her voice firm. "He is stronger than he appears, and if he is not, then he should not sit a throne." Clara stepped back, careful not to let the curtain rustle. Her heart thudded against her ribs. The document in the man's hand might as well have been a sword. Her name would be in it. Clara Weiss. The shifts, the wages, linen duty, floor scrubbing, every hour of her life reduced to ink. She thought of the ballroom, full of faces. The emperor, stern and watchful. The nobles, hungry for scandal. Leopold, unaware on the glittering floor. He had asked her to be brave, to walk through the fire. He did not know that someone had already poured oil on the flames. Clara slipped out of the antechamber as quietly as she had entered. The noise of the ballroom washed over her. Music, laughter, the rise and fall of conversation. Lights blurred together. Leopold stood near the center, speaking with a cluster of ministers. He caught sight of her at once. His eyes sharpened. He excused himself and crossed the room to her. "You look as if you have seen a ghost," he said softly. "What happened?" She swallowed. "Countess Amalia," she murmured. "She has the records, my records, from the household office. She has given them to the master of ceremonies. She wants him to announce the truth in front of everyone." His face hardened. "Where?" he asked. "In the antechamber," she said. "He may be on his way already." Leopold did not hesitate. "Stay here," he said. "No, come with me." He took her hand, not caring who saw, and led her along the edge of the room. People turned to watch them pass. A murmur rose, then faded as they slipped through the narrow door. The master of ceremonies stood alone in the small room now, staring at the sealed paper as if it might explode. He started when he saw them. "Your Highness," he stammered. "I did not expect—" "No," Leopold said. "I imagine you did not." His gaze dropped to the document. "What is that?" he asked, though he already knew. The man's throat bobbed. "Household records, Your Highness," he said. "Countess Amalia gave them to you," Leopold finished, "and asked you to humiliate my wife in front of the entire court. She said it was my duty," the man faltered, "that the Emperor would wish the truth known." "And what do you wish?" Leopold asked quietly. The master of ceremonies looked between them. "I wish," he said slowly, "not to be the one who reads such a thing aloud. I have daughters, Your Highness. I know how quickly reputations can be destroyed." Leopold held out his hand. "Give it to me," he said. The man hesitated only a moment before placing the sealed paper in his palm. Leopold weighed it, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," he said. "You will not speak of this to anyone." "No, Your Highness," the man said quickly. "You have my word." He bowed and hurried out. Silence fell. Clara stared at the folded paper. "Open it," she whispered. Leopold glanced at her. "We know what it contains," he said. "There is no need." "There is every need," she said, voice shaking. "If I am to face it, I must look at it, not hide." He studied her a moment longer, then broke the seal. His eyes moved down the page, line by line. She watched his mouth tighten. He read aloud, voice flat. "Clara Weiss, laundry duty, floor cleaning, bed-making in the Eastern Wing, 3 years service, no family listed, Orphanage of St. Agnes, prior residence." He lowered the paper. "It is all there," he said. "Everything you were." Clara let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "It is not a crime," she said, more to herself than to him, "to have scrubbed floors, to have carried water, to have no family." "No," he said. "It is not." "Yet they will treat it as one," she murmured. "Yes," he said quietly. "They will." For a moment neither of them spoke. Then he folded the paper once, twice, very precisely. "What will you do?" she asked. He slipped the folded document into his coat. "What I should have done from the beginning," he said. "I will tell them myself." Her eyes flew to his. "You cannot," she said. "Not like this. Not when they are already half against you." "If I let Amalia spring this on us," he said, "we lose every scrap of control. I will not have you dragged into the center of the room like a thief caught with a stolen spoon. If there is to be a reckoning, I will start it." "And if it destroys you?" she whispered. "If it destroys me," he said, "then perhaps this throne deserves a better man. But it will not be for lack of honesty." He took her hands. "I will not force you to stand beside me while I do this," he said. "If you wish to leave the ballroom before I speak, Johann can take you to your chambers. No one will think it strange." She looked at their joined hands. "And if I leave," she said, "they will say I fled. That I was ashamed." He waited. "Are you ashamed?" he asked. She thought of the orphanage, the endless scrubbing, the way other children had snickered at her worn shoes, the house on the edge of the city where she had served before Schönberg, the mistress who always found fault. She remembered the boy in the corridor, the fallen porcelain, her choice to take the blame. "No," she said slowly, "I am not ashamed of work. I am ashamed of lies." "Then let us end them," he said. Her throat tightened. "I will stand with you," she said, "whatever comes." "Good," he said simply. "Then we will go back in." They returned to the ballroom. The music still played, though more softly now. The Emperor had arrived during their absence, seated in a high-backed chair at the far end, with his daughters and a few ministers nearby. Courtiers circulated, careful to be seen in the right places. Countess Amalia stood near a column, her gaze fixed on them. Her brows rose when she saw Leopold's calm face. Her eyes flicked to his coat, as if she could see the folded paper inside. Leopold did not look at her again. He drew Clara toward the center of the room. The orchestra faltered as they passed, the conductor's hand dropping. The murmur of conversation thinned. Leopold stopped a few steps from the Emperor's chair. "Father," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "may I have the court's attention?" Franz looked at him, then at Clara, then at the clusters of people nearby. You already do, he said dryly. You have had it for days. There was a ripple of laughter, quickly stifled. Leopold inclined his head. Then allow me to make use of it, he said. There is something I must say to you and to everyone here. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. This is hardly the time for speeches, he said. We are here to celebrate. Then let us celebrate the right things, Leopold replied. He turned so he faced the room. Clara felt every gaze shift with him. Her heart beat so loudly she could barely hear. 2 nights ago, Leopold began, I presented Clara as my wife. Heads turned toward her, toward him, toward the Emperor. In doing so, he continued, I allowed a false impression to spread. Many of you assumed that there had been a proper ceremony, witnessed and recorded, that she came from a family like yours, with a name in the registers and a coat of arms on some dusty wall. I did not correct you. I allowed you to believe what was most comfortable. He paused. I was wrong. A hush fell, so complete that the faint crackle of candle wax could be heard. I married Clara in my own mind and heart long before any priest was summoned, he said. But there has been no official ceremony, not yet, and her family is not like yours. He reached into his coat and drew out the folded paper. In fact, he said, she has no family at all, at least none that a herald would recognize. She came to this palace as a maid. She has scrubbed your floors, carried your linens, polished the silver you eat from. For 3 years she has moved through these halls like a shadow you did not see. A wave rippled through the crowd, gasps, a few angry exclamations, faces flushed with shock or triumph or embarrassment. The Emperor's jaw tightened. Leopold, he began. Leopold did not look at him. Countess Amalia has been diligent, he said. She has obtained the records from the household office. She intended, I believe, to reveal them tonight. To protect the court from being deceived by a woman of low birth. Amalia's eyes flashed. Color rose in her cheeks. I intended, she said loudly, to protect the crown from mockery. A crown prince cannot take a maid. Enough, Leopold said, his voice sharp. You have had your turn behind closed doors, now you will listen. She pressed her lips together. Clara was a maid, he said. That is true. It is also true that she did not seek me out. She did not flirt with me in corridors or drop trays at my feet to gain my notice. A few people glanced awkwardly at one another. The stories had already grown. I noticed her, he said, because she spoke honestly when she had no reason to. Because she looked at me and saw a man, not a title. Because she has worked harder in 1 day than most of us do in a year. A murmur of protest rose at that. He let it. You are angry, he said. You feel misled. I understand. You ask, how can a maid become a princess? The answer is simple. She cannot. Not by herself. He lifted his chin. But a prince can choose to marry a woman who understands both sides of the palace walls. A future sovereign can decide that bloodlines are less important than character. Character? Someone scoffed. She lied to us. Because I asked her to, Leopold said at once. If you must blame someone, blame me. I feared your judgment. I feared my father's wrath. I thought if I wrapped her in a false name, you might accept her more easily. In trying to protect her, I made her into a liar. That is my sin, not hers. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. He was not throwing her to them. Not even now. A minister cleared his throat. Your Highness, he said, whatever your intentions, this is a grave breach of protocol. The people, Leopold cut in, already know what it is to be hungry, to be cold, to be ignored. Do you truly think they will hate me for choosing a woman who has lived as they have? Or will they recognize themselves in her and begin to hope that we might actually understand them? Hope is a dangerous thing, Countess Amalia said. So is despair, Leopold replied. He turned at last to his father. You have always told me, he said, that a ruler must be willing to sacrifice his own desires for the good of the empire. I have tried to believe that. I have tried to give up pieces of myself, until there was nothing left but duty. But what if the empire does not need another portrait in a stiff frame? What if it needs a man who can look his people in the eye and say, I chose this, not because I was told to, because it is right? Franz rose slowly from his chair. Are you lecturing me? He asked softly. No, Leopold said. I am asking you a question, as a son, as a future emperor. As a man who does not wish his first act as sovereign to be a lie, will you forbid me from marrying Clara because she was a maid? Or will you judge her by the way she stands here now under your gaze, refusing to hide? All eyes shifted to Clara. She felt their weight, their skepticism, their curiosity. She could have shrunk back. She could have lowered her head. Instead, she stepped forward. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice clear, though her hands trembled. "If I may speak." The Emperor looked at her. "You have already," he said, in silence. "The whole court has heard your story tonight without a word from you. You may as well add something to it." A few people chuckled nervously. Clara drew a breath. "I did not ask for this," she said. "I did not dream as a child of standing in this room in a gown like this. I dreamed of a door that closed, of a bed that was mine, of not being dismissed when someone wealthier frowned." Some of the nobles shifted, uncomfortable. "I know what it is to be ordered about," she went on, "to be scolded for mistakes I did not make, to clean up other people's messes and leave no trace of my own existence." She looked around the room, letting her gaze touch faces instead of windows and walls. "I know that many of you think I do not belong here," she said. "Perhaps you are right. I do not know your dances as well as you. I do not know your family histories. I cannot quote Latin or trace my blood back through a dozen titles. But I know how to work. I know how to listen. I know how to see the people you do not see." She swallowed. "If the Emperor commands that I leave this palace, I will obey," she said. "I have spent my whole life obeying. I will not break now. But if he allows me to stay," her voice wavered, then steadied, "if he allows me to stand beside his son, I will do everything in my power to be worthy of the trust. Not by pretending to be what I am not, but by bringing what I am to the service of this house." Silence fell again. Then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke. "If I may, Your Majesty," said the grey-haired general who had bowed to her days before. Franz glanced at him. "Go on, General Hauer," he said. Hauer stepped forward. "I have led men into battle," he said. "Men from farms and factories. Men who could not write their own names but would stand in front of a cannon for their comrades. I have seen noble officers run while peasants held the line. If we are to have an emperor who commands such men, perhaps it would not hurt for his wife to know what calloused hands feel like." A stir of agreement and disagreement. A noble woman in a dark gown spoke next. "My mother," she said quietly, "was a merchant's daughter. My grandfather nearly disowned my father for marrying her. He said she would bring shame to the family. Instead, she brought sense." She smiled faintly. "She taught him to read ledgers. Without her, we would have lost everything. Blood is not always the measure we think it is." A bishop, robes shimmering, cleared his throat. "The scriptures tell us," he said, "that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. We repeat it every Sunday. Perhaps it is time we considered what it might mean if taken seriously." Countess Amalia's lips thinned. "Are we to run the empire on proverbs?" she demanded. "Good intentions do not balance ledgers or calm restless provinces. A maid on the throne will not soothe men who fear losing their privileges." "Perhaps," the bishop said, "but she might soothe those who fear they will never have any." Franz lifted a hand. "Enough," he said. "This is not a market stall. We will not haggle over the crown like a bolt of cloth." The room quieted at once. He looked at Clara, at Leopold, at the faces around them. For once his expression was not easily read. "You have put me in a difficult position, Leopold," he said. "You always did have a talent for that." "I learned from you," Leopold replied. Franz almost smiled, then did not. "I will not decide this tonight," he said. A murmur rose. "Father," Leopold began. Franz silenced him with a glance. "I am not done," he said. "I will not decide this tonight because I refuse to be stampeded by scandal or sentiment. The empire deserves better than decisions made in the heat of embarrassment." He turned to the court. "You will all return to your revelry," he said. "You will not speak of this outside these walls until Christmas has passed. If I hear that a single word of this reaches the newspapers before then, I will know from which mouth it leaked, and that mouth will be silenced from my presence for a very long time." A collective shiver moved through the room. No one doubted he meant it. He faced Clara again. "You will remain in the palace," he said. "You will attend family gatherings. You will be observed, not as a maid. As the possible future crown princess of this empire, I will judge you myself, not by rumors. On Christmas Day after Mass, I will give my answer. He looked at Leopold. If in the meantime your choice brings the walls crashing down, that will also be my answer, he added. Leopold bowed his head. Thank you, he said. Do not thank me yet, Franz replied. I may still decide to send your Clara to a quiet convent in the mountains. He turned, signaling that the audience was over. The orchestra, after a moment's confusion, began to play again. Conversations resumed, though more subdued. Clara stood in the center of the floor, suddenly exhausted. Leopold took her hand. You were extraordinary, he said softly. I was shaking, she answered. My knees have forgotten how to belong to me. Then lean, he said. I have spare knees. Despite everything, she laughed. People approached them one by one. Some offered cautious congratulations. Others maintained politeness, their eyes cool. A few avoided them entirely. Countess Amalia did not come closer. She remained at a distance, speaking quietly to a cluster of nobles, her expression unreadable. At last Elise and Anna reached them. Elise's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You stubborn fool, she said to Leopold, though her voice trembled with affection. You had to make a speech, did you not? I thought it better than watching Amalia do it for me, he said. Elise turned to Clara. You were brave, she said. I am still angry that you lied to me, but I am also proud. Do not let it go to your head. We have years for me to tease you about it. Anna, cheeks flushed, blurted, I knew you were too sensible to have noble blood. This explains everything. Anna, Elise groaned. What? Anna protested. It is a compliment. Nobles are ridiculous. She threw her arms around Clara in a sudden hug. I hope father says yes, she whispered. If he does not, I shall never forgive him. Or you, she added, pulling back. You must not let him scare you into leaving. I will try, Clara said, stunned by the embrace. Hours later, when the ball finally wound down and the last guest drifted away, Clara found herself once again in a quiet corridor, the noise behind her like a fading echo. Leopold walked beside her, his jacket unbuttoned now, his hair slightly disordered. They reached a window that looked out over the city. Snow fell steadily, softening the sharp edges of roofs and chimneys. The sky was a dark velvet backdrop to the scattered lights. Clara rested her palm against the cold glass. Do you regret it? She asked. Telling them, risking your father's anger. He leaned against the wall beside her. I regret not doing it sooner, he said. I regret that I let you carry my lie. She shook her head. It was mine too, she said. I agreed. You agreed because I offered you a house, he replied. Because I dangled freedom in front of someone who had never had it. You also offered me a choice, she said. No one else ever has. Do not pretend you forced me. I walked into this with my eyes as open as I could make them. He looked at her profile, the curve of her jaw, the reflection of the snow in her eyes. Are you afraid? He asked. Yes, she said. Very. So am I, he admitted. That helps, she said. A little. He chuckled. The Emperor may still say no, she said. He may, Leopold agreed. He may also say yes, or something in between that pleases no one. If he says no, she murmured, I will leave, I must, I cannot stay where I am not wanted. If he says no, Leopold said, I will make sure you have your house, and more if I can, but do not send yourself away before he speaks. You belong here now as much as anyone. She turned to look at him. Do you believe that? She asked. Yes, he said simply. She studied his face, the lines of fatigue, the stubborn set of his mouth. You spoke of character, she said, of choosing what is right. Do you not fear you are being selfish? That you are risking the empire for a feeling? He considered. I have asked myself that 100 times, he said. But here is what I know. If I cannot make one honest choice in my own life, how can I ask an entire nation to trust my choices about theirs? And if the cost is me, she said softly, if the price of their trust is losing me. He reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering near hers on the window ledge. Then, he said slowly, I must decide whether I am willing to pay that price. Tonight I am not. On Christmas Day, we will see who I am, and who my father allows me to be. The snow fell, steady and quiet. Clara looked out over the city, Somewhere beyond those roofs, a small house was being made ready in her name, a door that would be hers to close, a table that would wait for her hands. Behind her, in the palace, decisions were gathering like clouds. For the first time since this began, there were no lies between them, no hidden past, no secret records in someone else's pocket. Whatever came next would come to two people who had seen each other clearly. Clara let her hand slide from the cold glass to rest beside his. She did not take his hand. She did not need to. They stood there in the quiet, watching the snow, two hearts waiting for an answer that would come with Christmas morning. Christmas morning came with bells. They rang from every church tower in Vienna, bright and insistent, cutting through the pale winter light. Their echoes reached Schönberg Palace, vibrating in the glass panes, trembling in the air of every corridor. Clara woke before the first chime. She had not truly slept. She had drifted in a shallow pool of rest, rising every time the wind tapped the shutters, every time her thoughts crowded in. Now she lay still for a moment, listening. Bells. Christmas, she whispered to the empty room. Her chest ached. On the table near her bed, Gerda had left a sprig of evergreen tied with a red ribbon and a small card in a neat, firm hand. For courage, it read. You have more than you think. Clara smiled faintly, then swung her legs out of bed. She dressed in a simple gown the maids had brought the night before. No silks, no embroidery. Plain grey-blue wool, well cut. She twisted her hair back with fingers that wanted to shake. A knock sounded at the door. Come in, she called. Johann entered, his expression cautious. Good morning, Fräulein, he said. Is it? She asked. That depends on His Majesty, Johann replied. He has sent for you. The family is gathered in the small audience chamber. Her heart jumped. Now? She asked. Now, Johann said gently. The prince is already there. Clara drew a breath. Then there is no sense delaying, she said. Let us go. They walked through quieter corridors than usual. Most of the palace was at mass or preparing for it. The smell of beeswax and pine drifted faintly through the air. At the door of the small audience chamber, Johann stopped. Here, he said. I go no farther. They will announce you. She nodded, palms damp. The guard outside opened the door and spoke her name. Fräulein Clara von Weissenthal. She stepped inside. The room was not large, but it felt full. The emperor sat in the central chair, as he had in his private audience room, but the atmosphere was different now. No ministers, no generals, only family. Elise and Anna stood together to one side. Friedrich lounged near a window, his usual grin muted. Several aunts and uncles were scattered about, their faces watchful. Countess Amalia stood near the back, her hands folded, her expression carefully composed. Leopold stood a few paces from his father's chair. He turned at once when she entered. His face was pale, but his eyes lit when he saw her. That alone steadied her more than any ribbon of evergreen. She walked to a place midway between the emperor and the door and curtsied. Your Majesty, she said. Your Imperial Highnesses. Franz studied her for a long moment. Come closer, he said. She obeyed, stopping at a respectful distance. Do you know why you are here? He asked. Yes, Your Majesty, she said. To hear your judgment. Anna made a small protesting sound, quickly smothered by Elise's elbow. Franz's mouth twitched. Direct, he said. I suppose that is one advantage of not being raised at court. No endless circling. He leaned back in his chair. I have spent a sleepless night, he said. I do not enjoy them at my age. When I was young, I lost sleep over battles, treaties, rebellions. Now I lose it because my son has decided to rewrite the rules of marriage. A ripple of wary amusement passed through the room. I have read your records, he went on. I have spoken with your former superiors. Frau Metzger, for one, had a great deal to say about your habit of taking blame for others. Clara's cheeks warmed. I did not wish the boy to be dismissed, she said. That is what she said, Franz replied. She seemed quite offended that you would throw yourself between her and her discipline. It upset the order of her kitchen. Anna stifled a laugh. Franz's gaze sharpened. I also learned, he said, that in 3 years of service you never once tried to use someone else's position to gain favor. You did not beg for easier duties. You did not scheme to move from scrub bucket to parlor. You simply did your work. I did not think I had a right to demand better, Clara said quietly. Everyone has a right to demand better, Franz said. The question is whether they have the power to do so. He shifted his gaze to Leopold. You have given her that power, he said. By bringing her here, by placing her in the center of a storm, you dressed her up, called her your wife, and tossed her into a sea of sharks. Did you think about what would happen when they smelled blood? Leopold's jaw tightened. I thought, he said, that I could shield her with my rank. I was wrong. I am trying to correct that, Franz grunted. You cannot correct everything with a speech, he said. Though I admit last night's effort was effective. There was a hint of reluctant respect in the word. He turned back to Clara. You spoke well, he said. You did not beg. You did not perform. You simply said what you knew. That is rare here. Clara swallowed. Thank you, Your Majesty, she murmured. Do not thank me yet, he said. You may not like what comes next. He rose from his chair. When I was your age, he said, looking past her to some point only he could see, I fell in love. The room shifted. This was not a story many had heard. She was not a princess, he said. She was the daughter of a minor count, clever, stubborn, fond of horses and arguments. We were not supposed to meet at all, but we did. In a stable, of all places. A faint smile touched his mouth, then faded. My father forbade it. He said the empire needed a different union, stronger ties, wider influence. I obeyed. He looked at Leopold. I married your mother, he said. I grew to love her. But sometimes, even now, I wonder what kind of emperor I might have been if I had defied him. If I had learned at 20 that a man can make a choice for his own heart and still serve his country. Leopold's eyes softened. You have told me many things, he said quietly. You never told me that. I did not wish to encourage you, Franz replied dryly. You are stubborn enough without romantic stories. He drew a breath. I will not lie, he said. Your choice still troubles me. Not because she was a maid. I find that part increasingly refreshing. It troubles me because you did not trust me with the truth from the beginning. Because you lied to the court. Because you thought you had to trick us into accepting her. I thought you would say no, Leopold said simply. I thought if I came to you with a servant on my arm and no plan, you would send her away before I could speak. You were probably right, Franz said. I am not a patient man. He moved closer to Clara, studying her as if seeing her for the first time. Look at me, he said. She lifted her gaze to his. You understand, he said, that if I consent to this, your life will never be simple again. People will pry into every corner of your past. They will mock your mistakes. They will attribute to you every change they dislike. They will call you an upstart, a schemer, a symbol of everything they fear. Yes, Your Majesty, she said. And still you wish this? He asked. She swallowed. I wished to be free, she said. That was my first wish, a house, a door, a life that did not depend on someone else's temper. The prince offered me that. I accepted. You could still have it, Franz said, even if I send you away. I know very well what he has arranged. She blinked. You know about the house, she whispered. I am the emperor, he said. Do not look so shocked. There are very few shadows in this palace that I am unaware of. Leopold stared. You said nothing, he said. I was curious to see what you would do when you thought you were being very clever, Franz replied. It has been entertaining. Clara almost smiled. Almost. Franz's gaze returned to her. You have your house, he said. In a manner of speaking, the papers are signed. The trust holds the deed. You could leave today. No one would stop you. You would have the simple life you dreamed of. Her chest tightened. To leave, to step outside the palace and not return, to walk into a space that belonged to her utterly. And you, Franz said, nodding toward Leopold, would be left with a scandal, a disappointed foreign court, and the knowledge that your one act of defiance ended with a vanished girl and a very silly story. It would also end with Clara safe, Leopold said. Franz's eyes narrowed. Would you let her go? He asked. If she asked it? Leopold looked at Clara. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet and steady. If you wish to leave, he said, I will not stop you. I will not drag you back. I will not send guards to your door. You will be free. I will face whatever comes. Alone. The word settled between them. Clara's heart twisted. "What do you wish?" she asked him. "Not as a prince, as a man." He did not hesitate. "I wish," he said, "to wake up each day knowing you are somewhere within these walls, to see you walk into a room and not feel as if the air has been stolen from it, to argue with you, to laugh with you, to make mistakes and learn how to mend them together. I wish to marry you, not in pretense, not to spite anyone, but because I love you." The room faded around them. Clara's throat closed. "You said you should not care for me," she whispered. "That it would complicate everything." "It has," he said, "and I do not care." Franz cleared his throat. "You see my problem," he said to the room. "My heir is in love. Our maid is honest. And I am old and very tired of watching young men make the same mistakes I did." Elise blinked rapidly. Anna sniffled loudly. Countess Amalia stood perfectly still, her jaw tight. Franz lifted his hand. "Clara Weiss," he said, "or Clara von Weissenthal, if we must pretend your name has more syllables. I will not send you away, I will not hide you. I will not bless this union in secret and pretend you are someone's distant cousin. If you and my son still wish to marry after hearing what I am about to say, you will do so with my acknowledgement." Leopold exhaled sharply. "What conditions?" he asked warily. Franz gave him a sharp look. "Do not interrupt when you are being granted what you want," he said. He faced Clara fully. "If you marry my son," he said, "you will be more than his comfort. You will be the bridge between this palace and the people who scrub its floors. You will not forget where you came from. You will not allow him to forget. You will spend time in the kitchens, in the laundry, in the streets, not as a curiosity, but as someone who understands. You will use whatever influence you gain to make this place less blind." Clara nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. "I would have tried to do that anyway," she said. "Good," Franz replied. "Then we are not entirely at odds." He looked at Leopold. "You, boy," he said, "if you marry her, you accept that you are binding yourself not only to her, but to the idea she represents. You cannot parade her before the people as a symbol of change and then govern as if nothing has changed. You will listen when she speaks. You will not hide behind her when you are afraid of my disapproval." Leopold almost smiled. "I thought you did not wish to encourage me," he said. "I do not," Franz said. "Yet here we are." He sighed. "I will face the ministers," he went on. "I will face the foreign courts. I will swallow my pride and admit that my son has chosen a path I did not expect. In return, you will not make me regret it more than necessary." He extended his hand toward Clara. "Come here," he said. She stepped closer, her pulse roaring in her ears. He took her right hand in both of his. "You are not my choice," he said plainly, "but you are his, and I am beginning to suspect that he may be right more often than I allow." His grip tightened, surprisingly warm. "Welcome to this family, Clara. If you survive us, you will have earned your place." The room let out a breath it had been holding. Elise began to clap, ignoring the disapproving look of an aunt. Anna joined her eagerly. Others followed, some slowly, some more sincerely. Countess Amalia's hands remained still. Her eyes met Clara's over the heads of the others. There was no warmth there, but something had shifted. The woman inclined her head very slightly, not in surrender, in acknowledgement. Leopold stepped forward until he stood mere inches from Clara. His voice dropped to something only she, his father, and the nearest few could hear. "Clara Weiss," he said, "in front of my family, with my father's reluctant blessing and the knowledge that we are both fools, will you marry me? Truly, today, in the chapel, with witnesses and a priest who will not pretend he mislaid the register." A laugh broke through her tears. "You have a very odd way of proposing," she said. "I am a very odd man," he replied. "Say yes before I start reciting political conditions." Her breath trembled. "Yes," she said, "I will marry you." Relief washed over his face. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so simple and reverent that it stole her breath again. "Good," he murmured. "Then let us do it before anyone wakes up and decides this is a dream." The rest of the morning moved like a whirlwind. Servants ran with quiet urgency, preparing the chapel. A priest was summoned, hastily robed, his eyes wide but shining. Elise and Anna dragged Clara away to help her dress, their chatter a blend of nerves and delight. "You are shaking," Elise said, fastening a row of tiny buttons. So are you, Clara replied. That is only because I will be expected to cry elegantly, Elise said. I am not good at elegant crying. Anna bounced on her toes. Do you think I will be allowed to throw flower petals? She asked. You are 14, Elise said. You are too old for petals. I am never too old for petals, Anna declared. Gerda arrived with a box in her hands. From His Highness, she said, her eyes soft. Inside, nestled on a piece of velvet, lay a simple circlet of gold. Not the heavy jeweled crown of a queen, a modest band, engraved with tiny leaves. Clara touched it with reverent fingers. I cannot wear that, she whispered. It looks like it belongs to someone else. It belongs to whoever puts it on, Gerda said. That is the secret of all crowns. When they were finished, Clara stood before the small mirror. The gown she wore now was ivory, with a high neckline and long sleeves. Modest, pure. Her hair was braided and coiled, pinned with a few small pearls. She looked like a bride. Elise's eyes glistened. Do you remember when we met? She asked. I thought you were terribly frightened. I was, Clara said. Are you now? Elise asked. Yes, Clara answered. But I am also grateful that you came to that cold window, that you did not turn away. Elise hugged her tightly. You are my sister now, she said. Whatever happens. Anna threw her arms around both of them. And mine, she said. If you ever decide to run away, you must take me with you. I will keep that in mind, Clara laughed. They walked together to the chapel. Unlike the main cathedral in the city, the palace chapel was small and plain, its beauty in its simplicity. White walls, wooden pews, a few paintings of saints who had also made impossible choices. The imperial family waited in the front rows. A few trusted nobles were present, those who had not flinched the night before when opinions had been asked. General Hauer, the noblewoman whose mother had been a merchant, the bishop who spoke of scripture. Leopold stood at the front, near the altar. When he saw Clara, he forgot to breathe for a moment. She moved down the aisle, her steps slow but steady. The murmuring stopped. The priest cleared his throat, but no one looked away from her. She reached Leopold's side and took her place facing him. He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. You are the bravest person I know, he said. I am terrified, she whispered back. That is what makes it brave, he said. The priest began. The words of the ceremony were familiar to many there. They had heard them at a dozen weddings. Yet today they felt sharper, more alive. Do you, Leopold von Habsburg, take this woman, Clara, to be your lawfully wedded wife? The priest asked. Leopold looked into her eyes. I do, he said, with all that I am and all that I am not yet. And do you, Clara, take this man, Leopold, to be your lawfully wedded husband? The priest asked. She drew a breath. I do, she said, with all the courage I can find and all the love I am still learning to give. He slid a ring onto her finger, not a massive gem, but a simple band of gold that matched the circlet she would wear one day. She slipped a ring onto his hand as well, her fingers brushing his. In the name of God and before these witnesses, the priest said, I declare you husband and wife. What God has joined, let no man put asunder. Leopold did not wait for further invitation. He lifted her face in his hands and kissed her. It was not a grand, sweeping kiss no one would forget. It was gentle, sure, filled with relief and promise. It tasted of cold air and candle smoke and the salt of unshed tears. The chapel blurred around them. When he drew back, his forehead rested against hers for a moment. My wife, he said softly. She smiled, tears spilling over at last. My husband, she answered. Applause broke out, not the polite clap of duty, but real human warmth. Elise cried openly. Anna cheered. Even General Hauer wiped at one eye. The Emperor stood. For a heartbeat, Clara feared he might speak words that would complicate everything again. Instead, he stepped forward, lifted her hand and placed it in Leopold's once more. You have both chosen, he said. Now we will see what you make of that choice. There was no blessing spoken aloud. It was in his gesture. Later, after a small wedding breakfast where Anna indeed scattered petals, and Friedrich made toasts that veered dangerously close to irreverent, Leopold led Clara through a series of passages she had never known existed. Where are we going? She asked, half laughing. To meet your new subjects, he said. They emerged onto the palace balcony. A murmur rose from below like the sound of the sea. Word had spread, of course. It always did. People had gathered in the square outside, despite the cold, craning their necks, stamping their feet, talking all at once. When Leopold and Clara appeared, the murmur swelled. Some faces showed shock, some delight, some skepticism. They looked up at a prince in uniform, and at his side not a foreign princess in layers of jewels, but a young woman in a simple ivory gown, her hair coiled like any other girl's on her wedding day. Leopold raised his hand. "My people," he began. Clara's hand tightened in his. He glanced at her and smiled. "Our people," he corrected. "You have heard many things. Rumors, stories, some of them true, some less so. You know that the woman beside me did not grow up in palaces. She has scrubbed floors like yours. She has known hunger, she has been cold. Today she is my wife." The crowd shifted. A voice called out, rough and curious. "Is she one of us, then?" Clara stepped forward before she could second-guess herself. "I was," she called back, surprised at the strength in her own voice. "I suppose I still am. I will not forget it. I will never pretend I woke up with this crown on my head. If I'm to stand here, I will stand as someone who knows what it is to stand down there." There was a pause. Then someone began to clap. It spread, hesitant at first, then louder. A cheer rose, not as thunderous as those for military victories or royal births, but real. Leopold looked at her, his eyes bright. "You are learning quickly," he murmured. "You are a terrible influence," she replied. He laughed. As they stood together, the snow began to fall again, soft and slow. It caught in her hair, on his shoulders, on the stone of the balcony. For a long moment Clara let herself simply feel the cold on her face, the warmth of his hand, the hum of the crowd, the steady beat of her own heart, no longer trying to escape her chest. Humiliation had brought her here, she thought. A broken tray, a lie in a corridor, a prince's desperate plan. She had been nothing more than a solution to a problem. Now she was something else. Not a princess in the way the storybooks told it. She was still learning how to move in silk, how to answer barbed questions without bleeding. She would stumble again. There would be battles yet, with nobles, with tradition, with her own fear. But she was no longer a shadow in the corners of the palace. She was standing in the light beside a man who had chosen her with all the stubbornness in his soul. Later, when the bells rang again for evening prayers, and the palace grew quieter, Clara and Leopold found themselves back at the window where they had stood the night before. The city below was lit with candles in 100 windows. Families gathered around tables. Children pressed their noses to glass, watching snowflakes drift. "Do you remember," Leopold said, "what you told me you wished for in the chapel when you thought God might be listening?" "A room of my own," she said. "A door, a life that did not depend on another's whims." He nodded. "You have that now," he said. "Twice over." She smiled. "I have more than I asked for," she said, "and more to lose." "Do you regret it?" he asked. She turned to him. "No," she said. "If I had chosen the house and left you to this alone, I would have been safe. But I would have spent every winter wondering whether I had turned away from my own life because I was afraid. I have lived too long letting others decide my path. This time I chose the harder road. It feels right." He reached for her hand. "We will make it less hard," he said. "Together." "You cannot promise that," she said. "No," he agreed. "But I can promise to keep trying, to listen, to change when change is needed, to fight beside you, not in front of you as if you were a shield." Her throat tightened. "And I," she said, "promise to remind you that you are a man, not a portrait. To tell you when you are wrong, even when the rest of the world is bowing. To stand between you and your worst instincts, as you did between me and my fear." He smiled. "Then we might just manage," he said. She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Outside, snow fell on palaces and tenements alike, on grand avenues and narrow alleys, on the roofs of the rich and the poor with the same quiet blessing. Someone, somewhere, was lighting a candle and whispering a wish. Clara thought of the girl she had been, scrubbing floors in the orphanage, dreaming only of a door to close. She wished she could reach back through time and tell that girl, "You will be humiliated. You will be afraid. You will be asked to pretend and then to tell the truth." But one day a man who is more than his title will ask you to stand beside him, and you will say yes. And in saying yes, you will become more yourself than you have ever been. She did not know what the future would bring. Children, perhaps. Wars, perhaps. Joy and sorrow woven together as they were in any life. But she knew this. Whatever came, they would face it with open eyes, with hands clasped, with hearts that had learned, at last, to choose. She lifted her head and looked at him. "Merry Christmas, Leopold," she said softly. He brushed a stray curl from her cheek, his touch gentle. "Merry Christmas, Clara," he replied. "My wife, my courage, my foolish, wonderful choice." And as the bells rang out over the snow-covered city, two souls who had once walked very different roads stood together at a window, ready at last to begin the long, ordinary, beautiful work of loving and being loved. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.